Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
To revisit a memory with his deceased mother, but the device starts malfunctioning and he has to turn it off. He yells at his scientists and demands to know what's happening to the company's systems, so the men reveal that Christopher has escaped. If they don't find him by Friday, the whole company will collapse. A desperate Ethan later meets with Bradbury in the virtual world. He knows that Cosmo is on Bradbury's hunt list and offers him a deal. Instead of taking Cosmo to the authorities, Ethan wants him to hand him over to his company. In the mine, Bradbury's Neurocaster is activated again. In the desert, the group is discussing the idea of entering an abandoned mall to search for food. A robot sees them and throws a fridge at them, breaking the van's front window. Herman tries running away, but the enemy keeps throwing things and causes him to fall. The van lands upside down and the group is immediately surrounded by robots, who capture them and take them to the mall. There's a whole society of robots inside, from entertaining models to regular house appliances. There's even a giant one outside that looks at them through the window. Mr. Peanut shows up and apologizes for capturing them, explaining the robots thought they were dangerous scavengers. When Michelle tells him about her situation, Peanut reveals that Dr. Amherst visited this place once and that he has a PhD in human-machine interaction. Peanut quickly kicked him out, so he doesn't know where the doctor is now. Michelle wants to go out to continue her search and John reminds her how dangerous it is at night, so he convinces her to wait until morning. In private, Michelle remembers her last Christmas with Christopher and how little she saw him since he went to college. She can't help crying at the memory, and Cosmo comforts her before playing the cartoon that the siblings used to watch together. Soon a bunch of other robots join the watch party, which is noticed by Peanut. Later, after everyone falls asleep, they're suddenly awakened by a male robot asking for Christopher. Cosmo raises his hand and the robot gives him a postcard that Amherst left for him. There's an address written on the card and a note saying that Amherst will be waiting for him. That address is in scavenger territory, so they can't enter it without a plan. Peanut overhears everything and introduces them to a training robot that keeps malfunctioning while trying to explain how to fight the scavengers. John thinks he may be a liability, but the robot impresses him by shooting baseballs at high speed. In the morning, Bradbury makes it to the exclusion zone and watches the mall from afar, noticing that the group is leaving in Peanut's car. They spend the whole day driving and by nighttime they finally make it to an abandoned amusement park where the address is supposed to be located. Michelle sees lights in one of the attractions, so she concludes someone must be around. Suddenly a huge clown head activates and creepy robots begin appearing around the heroes. The group immediately begins running as they shoot at any enemy that gets too close. Peanut tries to communicate with them, but the creepy robots only know how to growl. The group makes it to the building with the lights only to discover the doors are fake. The robots are coming closer and they don't know what to do. Suddenly more lights are turned on around the park and music starts playing on the speakers while fire comes out from a few statues. The robots back off in fear before a trap door opens under the group, causing them to slide down into a hidden tunnel. In an underground room they finally find Amherst, who is excited to see the postcard in Cosmo's hand. Michelle immediately pushes him and demands information on Christopher, so Amherst reveals the boy is on Center's labs in Seattle. After the accident, Christopher was put through some routine tests and the MRI machine alerted the hospital that he was special. He was exactly why they needed to win the war, so the doctor let Center take him and lied to Michelle about his death. Amherst now activates a computer that plays a video of an experiment. Christopher had been comatose and they thought it was permanent, so they connected his brain to the Neurocaster network to make it work. Amherst isn't proud of this but thinks it was necessary to save the world and points out Christopher would have died in bed if they hadn't taken him. 13 months after the beginning of the experiment, Christopher woke up and Amherst wanted to disconnect him. However, Ethan refused and threatened to kill Amherst if he tried. The doctor decided to run away, but before he left, he established a tiny connection between Christopher and the outside network. He also gave him the location of the mall so he could find a new family among the robots. Michelle points out Christopher already had a family and John punches Amherst for her. At that moment Bradbury appears outside and shoots the entrance to access the tunnel. He slides down too and finds the room empty. The lights suddenly go out and Peanut tackles Bradbury from behind to smash him against an electrical grid. Bradbury's Neurocaster is electrocuted for a few seconds and he drops his gun, but he manages to push Peanut off to recover. A fight ensues as Peanut reveals a sword hidden inside his cane, but Bradbury is still stronger and easily overpowers him. The rest of the group is sneaking out, but they freeze when they hear a noise. A bunch of soldier Neurocasters appear in the air and land around the heroes, asking them to surrender. The training robot starts shooting balls with such strength that he manages to break a few of their helmets. All this is seen by Ethan through the cameras and he orders the soldiers to capture Cosmo by killing everyone else if necessary. Cosmo throws a ball to distract a soldier and Michelle appears behind him, shooting paint at him until his propeller malfunctions and he crashes into the ceiling. When a second soldier tries to capture her, Amherst shoots him down and tells the duo he knows a way out. John and the other robots keep on fighting the rest of the squad, defeating them with improvised weapons. In the underground room, Bradbury rips Peanut's hat off and says he broke the treaty, so what happens to his family is his fault. At the same time, a bunch of soldiers arrive at the mall. Then Bradbury comes out and starts shooting at attractions randomly. Amherst tells his friends to run before he comes out to comfort Bradbury, daring to shoot. Bradbury hesitates to kill another human being, so Ethan takes over a Nurcaster and shoots Amherst himself. The doctor falls on some debris and dies when a metal bar impales him, which leaves Bradbury reconsidering his morals. Michelle and Cosmo try to run away, but they're surrounded by soldiers. One of them holds Michelle down while the other grabs Cosmo to then fly away. Bradbury shoots the Neurocaster holding Michelle and tells her to go home before he flies off too. In the morning, the group returns to the mall and finds it in ruins with most of the robots destroyed. Meanwhile, Cosmo is taken to the center labs to reunite with Christopher's body. As Ethan connects him to the system, Bradbury realizes he was lied to and Cosmo isn't just a robot, so he's angry that he was sent to hunt a boy. Ethan reminds him that this child helped him win the war and claims that sacrifice is required to move a species forward. Back in the mall, John tells Michelle that she shouldn't give up and that he'll help her if she decides to keep on fighting. Then Michelle checks Amherst's computer to confirm it has the codes to leave the exclusion zone and the location of the Seattle lab. The computer also explains if they disconnect Christopher, the entire Neurocaster system and the company itself will shut down. At that moment, Peanut comes back and reminds her that he signed a treaty to achieve peace, but Michelle changes his mind by pointing out that the attack on the mall means the treaty is invalid. Using a bunch of abandoned trucks, John, Michelle, and all the surviving robots leave the desert and make their way to Seattle. Herman even finds a new giant suit and uses it to start throwing things at the center labs, cracking their windows. Ethan immediately sends all his soldiers out, so Herman and John begin running away to make them follow them, creating an opening for Michelle and Amherst's computer to sneak into the building. John shoots at the incoming soldiers while Herman smashes them with his huge hands. However, one of the Neurocasters self-destructs and brings Herman's suit down. When a soldier tackles John, Herman reveals he's got a second suit inside the first and saves his friend so they can keep running. Once the task force is far enough, the rest of the robots also join the fight, which is seen by Bradbury on the cameras. An angry Ethan rushes to his office to put on a secret helmet that allows him to control a special Neurocaster and joins the fight too, easily bringing down most of the robots. In the main lab, Amherst's computer pretends to be a crazy violent robot to scare the scientists away. Michelle confirms her brother is still alive, but to talk to him she'll need a Neurocaster. At the same time, Bradbury goes outside and tells Peanut where to find Ethan, saying he's finally found someone less human than a robot. Then he disconnects his Neurocaster, finally quitting the war. When Michelle puts on the helmet, she finds herself in the memory of her last Christmas with her brother. She tells Christopher that she wants to save him, but he explains that his body is weak and disconnecting him will kill him. He doesn't want to live the rest of his life in this state though, so he tells his sister to do it anyway. In the meantime, Ethan destroys Herman's final suit. The little guy is also hurt and John rushes to help him, but it's too late. At that moment, Ethan is found by Peanut, who says he wants to renegotiate the treaty. In the lab, Michelle refuses to disconnect her brother because she doesn't want to lose him again. Christopher insists he hasn't felt anything in years, so he can't be saved, but her friends do need the help. After lots of tears, Michelle says goodbye to Christopher and returns to the real world to finally disconnect him. All the Neurocasters instantly go down and the robots celebrate their victory. John is still sad over Herman, whose head suddenly opens and reveals a tiny robot inside. Chaos takes over the world as all computers stop working. The news starts covering Center's experiments on a human child and Ethan is arrested while people begin asking for the exclusion zone to be taken down. In the desert, John and the robots help Michelle make a video in which she tells people to leave their helmets behind and enjoy the world again. Meanwhile, Cosmo is thrown in the trash, but his head suddenly moves.